So I introduced myself before. I'm David Hirsch. By training, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. So understand that today's talk is not based on my medical training so much as it is on things that have come up in areas of this area of interest in mine. I do provide a gender-affirming hormone therapy for transgender people. But I got the idea for this talk at a seminar I went to last fall and heard, among many, many lectures, this was one on adolescent and childhood development of gender identity, and so that's what I'm basing this on. I started doing gender-affirming hormone therapy in 2019, actually, so I've been doing it now for 4 years, and I have a couple hundred patients, so getting there. I'll see if I can make my presentation work. Okay. Can you all see the mouse cursor moving around on the screen? Yes? Okay. The first thing I'd like to start with, and it's probably the case, as it certainly is in my clinical practice, that a lot of people in my audience, as well as a lot of people in my clinic, are much better knowledge based than I do about these things. They're much better studied. They come in and they teach me something every day. So I hope there's some new information here for at least some of you. I'd like to start off with what I just love. This is from, it's called The Gender-Bred Person. This is in revision 4, although this is revision 3. It shows this person that has 3 sort of areas of sexuality and gender. The first is their gender identity. Second is who they're attracted to. And the third is their physical sexual development, which can change over time, of course, either subtly or drastically. So I'm going to zoom in on the next slide. So gender identity is how you in your head define your gender based on how much you align or don't align with what you understand to be the options for gender. So you can have anything from 0, which would be non-gendered, and you can have some amount of womanness or some amount of manness, and any mixture of those. So they give some examples. This is let's see if we can see, this is a woman and this is a man because of the way these sliders work. And then you have people who are sort of genderqueer, non-binary with more mixture. The next item is gender expression, which is the ways you present gender through your actions, dress, and demeanor, and how those presentations are interpreted based on gender norms. And again, you can have a more feminine presentation or more masculine presentation, somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it might change day to day for somebody, especially for somebody who's non-binary. Biological sex is also complicated. I think this is one where people tend to think there's one or the other. But in fact, there's a whole area of intersex, which is people who are born with genitals that don't neatly fit into one category or another. And so again, you can be more female, more male, or somewhere in the middle. And then in terms of sexual orientation, they also consider it to be 2 separate areas between sexual attraction, where you could be attracted to nobody. You could be attracted to more people who are more feminine, more female, more masculine, more male, in terms of sex itself. And then romantic attraction is kind of a separate thing. So you could want to be in relationships with people who are more feminine, more masculine, neither, both, anyone. I think it's a really useful tool to think about all the different ways that people are sexual beings and gendered beings. So to get specifically to the topic, this is one of these things where I'm thinking in preparation for this about all the many different topics we could put into it. I kept it pretty short, not many slides, because what I really want to do is have dialogue and allow y'all to direct where the rest of the conversation goes. And I'll try to answer questions, and maybe some of y'all will have answers for the others of y'all. That's my hope. Anyway, in childhood at around age 2, and this is all based on research, at age 2, children become conscious of the physical differences between boys and girls. Then before their 3rd birthday, most children can easily label themselves as either a boy or a girl. So this starts pretty early. By age 4, most children have a stable sense of their gender identity. So they don't necessarily, they're not going to change from day to day. I have a case here. This is the case of Naomi. This is something we do in medicine, by the way. Every presentation is sprinkled with cases just to make it more interesting, I guess. But this is a case that might present to, for example, a pediatrician. This is Naomi, and, oh, actually, I'm not there yet, sorry. In childhood, as early as 3 to 4 months, infants can distinguish between categories of female and male faces, and between voices at 6 months. So even back before that 2-year-old, they've done studies where like really young babies can distinguish the gender of the people talking to them and that they can see in their limited vision. At 10 months, infants can make stereotypic associations between faces and objects. Like, for example, they will relate a scarf with a woman's face and a hammer with a man's, which I just think that's really young for 10 months. But it is what it is. The associations, however, these are not necessarily the same kinds of things that are happening later on in terms of gender development. I just think it's an interesting research fact. And now we get to Naomi. Apologize. So this is Naomi showing us up at her pediatrician's office. She's 3.5 years old, assigned female at birth, comes in with both parents. For the last 6 months or so, she has consistently been referring to herself as a boy. And when her baby brother, who was born this year, she consistently refers to herself as a brother and not a sister. She prefers to have her hair short, to choose clothes from the boys section, and plays more often with boy toys. She has not asked to be called a different name or use a different pronoun. The parents are wondering what to do when she's ready to start kindergarten and how to talk to friends and family. And by the way, this is I'm sure you all know this one, but when you go to a Target, have you ever been to like the boys section of the toys and the girls section of the toys? And they're labeled like that, right? There's boys' toys and girls' toys. No, they're not. But you can tell which aisle is which aisle in the eyes of the marketing people. So I think that's kind of an interesting fact. It's always best to walk down all the aisles with your kids because you just never know what they're going to like. So for Naomi, what are we going to tell? What are we going to tell our parents? And the basic idea here is that at that age, you may remember we're back in the age 4, children have a stable sense of their gender identity, but the question is this that they're practicing being a gender? Is this that they have a stable gender identity? Is it a gender expression without an identity? And so the research says that kids use gender scripts to interpret the expectations. And it's also the case that gender expression, which one might assume is what Naomi is undergoing, she's expressing maleness, not the same thing as gender identity, which kind of comes a little bit later on. I was looking for pictures, by the way, and when you look for pictures of kids playing in clothing or in situations that are not according to their assigned at birth gender, what you mostly find is little boys in dresses, little boys, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of hard, but that's what I found, and these are some cute kids. At age 4 to 5, lots of children undergo some gender role exploration. So they play dress up, they play house, and they may take on different roles. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's a subtle gender identity for them. Let's look at another case. This is Ari. Ari is a 7-year-old who was assigned male at birth and identifies as a girl. Since she was 3 to 4 years old, she always played with girl toys and loved dressing up as a princess, mermaid, etc., but also loved Legos and superheroes. Around age 4 to 5, she started asking for dresses to wear, and this is important, for everyday clothes, right? So no longer dress up. This is how she's seeing herself, in everyday clothes. And she wanted to grow her hair long. She used to say, "Today I am a girl," or "Today I am a boy," and correlated her clothing accordingly. This past year, she began asking questions about her body, growing breasts, and having a baby. Recently, she told parents, "I am a girl," and wants to use female pronouns at school. So, what do we tell Ari's parents, and how do we cope with Ari's situation? So we're into the area here. Oh, and by the way, this picture is of Avery Jackson, who was that third quote where she says, "The good thing about being a girl is they don't have to pretend to be a boy." She's a superhero, amazing person. Anyway, so by age 6, most kids will have a fixed, constant gender identity. Now, whether they're telling anybody that or not really depends on the social environment and the home environment. And of course, things really do happen at different ages for people to really get an understanding of their gender identity, but research would suggest by age 6, most children have kind of a fixed, constant identity, such that boys realize they're going to grow up to be men, girls realize they're going to grow up to be women, and non-binary people are questioning. They don't really know. So this is a question that comes up a lot. How do we know that a child is transgender? Most children, and remember these are the younger ones, 4-year-olds and younger, who exhibit gender-variant behaviors are not transgender. By age 6 or 7, most children exhibit sex stereotypic behaviors, and almost all by age 13. And the difference between gender expression and transgender consists mostly of the persistence, the insistence, and the consistency of it. So that people, children, adolescents who will eventually be diagnosed or be transgender tend to be quite insistent on it. You can't change their minds easily. And in fact, if you continue to do that, it has significant mental health consequences. So the answer is, it's difficult. There are, for therapists and psychologists who do this work, there are extensive batteries of questionnaires, and you want to give this over a period of time before you make a diagnosis that somebody is gender diverse. Of course, puberty and adolescence is the time where people create an identity of self and who they are, as separate from their family, from the people around them. And gender identity is a big part of that. They also develop a sexual identity during that time. They kind of figure out who they're attracted to. So it's a time of huge change. And for gender dysphoria, which I treat a lot, now this is, gender dysphoria is defined as distress at sort of being in the wrong body. This is often when it really starts to take off, because you start to have development of secondary sexual characteristics, the chest, body hair, you start to have more erections, and so all kinds of things that come with puberty. For people who are in the wrong body, it starts to become a lot more distressing. Maybe not so distressing when you're 9, and a lot of that stuff hasn't happened. So In puberty and adolescence, gender exploration is a journey. Of course, as we mentioned in the gender-bred person, gender expression is not the same thing as sexual orientation or identity. It's really important for people in puberty to have the opportunity to explore. One of the things when, and I have very few patients that are under 16 or 17, so deep into puberty, but one of the things that the pediatric endocrinologists that take care of those folks in early puberty, it's never before puberty, but in early puberty, is to block puberty with hormone blockers to give the young person more time to kind of sort things out. That's the main purpose of puberty blocking, is just to give them some time to figure out where they want to go or what's going on inside, because things happen fast in puberty. This is a quote from the talk that I heard on it, and that is that support and love doesn't mean not asking questions. So I think it's reasonable for parents, guardians to ask hard questions, not accept necessarily in the first 10 minutes that a young person says, oh, I believe I'm transgender. Okay, let's explore that, right? It's not necessarily, you don't have to run off to the therapist about that. Ask the questions. Let it develop, let things develop, but at the same time be supportive. Some issues for gender diverse kids. I don't think any of these are big surprises, but sports is a big deal. I think the problem of people who went through adolescence with testosterone dominant hormones participating in women's sports, it's a really thorny issue. I don't have any good answers for that. I think the World Athletic Associations, even like really sort of right-thinking people, can, I think, really disagree about that one. It's very difficult because there are clear physical changes that come along with testosterone in those developmental years in terms of bone growth and muscle growth that never really goes away. And you have to ask yourself, why do we have gender difference? Why do we have gendered sports in the first place? It's just a thorny issue. I'm like, if questions come up on that one, I'm going to punt because I don't know the answer on that one. Bathrooms is a huge issue. The way I see it, because I have mostly, like I say, young adult, older adult, or like 16, 17-year-olds. Bathrooms is a problem. Bathrooms are a problem at work, particularly, because I have people who have come out to friends and family, but not at work because they have to decide what bathroom to use at work, and that's a real concern for them. So, but it's a problem in school as well. Gender groupings. I love that the Boy Scouts is more inclusive now, but there are all kinds of clubs, groupings like that are quite gendered and not necessarily accepting of out-group genders. Peer influence, I think, is something that there have been a lot of questions about lately. Like, is the rise of gender diverse young people due to peer influence? And I don't know the answer to that. I think probably in part it is, but at the same time, it's just something that's always been there, but has been sort of in the closet and under wraps. And it's quite possible that more than one thing is going on. And then name and pronoun changes. There are legal things around name changes that can be complicated and require the support of, like, medical professionals, for example. Okay, so that's it for my slides.